Hi, I'm John People from Redeemer Church in Monroe, Michigan. I want to talk today about fear and this climate of fear that we now live in. These three things that are going on in our country and some of them around the globe. Number one, the virus. Number two, the economic struggle and economic situation. And number three, the racial tension and situation. All of these things can work, sometimes all three, to produce fear in us. Have I ever felt afraid? Well, of course I have, and you have too. But what can we do about this emotion of fear when we feel it so that it doesn't overwhelm us? I like some of the things that James Gall said last week when we had our online conference. And James gave this example. He said, one of my daughters-in-laws has lost an uncle to the COVID virus. I know it's real. I also know that the pandemic of fear is worse than the virus. We must conquer this spirit of fear. We must be the Joshuas and the Calebs that rise and say, we are more than able to go up and take this mountain. We are more than able to go up and possess the land. How can we live less fearfully? How can we even be assertive in our lives in the midst of chaotic and troublesome storms of life? The answer to that, I think, is simple. It's not simplistic, but it is simple, because the antidote to fear is faith. Where there is faith, where there is an atmosphere of faith, where there is a faith-filled heart, fear cannot simultaneously coexist in that atmosphere or in that faith-filled heart. Faith and fear don't go together. When you have faith in something, you're obviously not afraid of that thing. In this sense, faith is like trust. When you trust something, that emotion of trust is not accompanied by, well, I'm afraid of it, because precisely you trust it. And so where there is faith, fear vanishes. But faith in what? The ultimate faith that would cover all the fears of life would be faith that God is with us, that God is with you, that he has not left nor has he forsaken you, that he who dwells in you is greater than the one who dwells in the world, that indeed he is working out his plans and purposes for you, and he works all these things together for good to those who trust him. Faith that as you put your trust in him, he will make straight your paths. It's this kind of faith that combats the fears of life. You see, fear thrives in darkness, in hiddenness. It's like a virus in this way. A virus spreads by finding a host. Faith says, fear, I will not be hosting you. I want you to think of yourself as a host. Think of your body, your soul, your heart, and your mind as a temple. In that temple, which is you, cultivate an atmosphere of faith. I've invented this little acronym, G.R.O.W, GROW, to understand an atmosphere of faith that combats fear. G, give thanks. Make a list of things that you are thankful for. Take time to count the things that you are thankful for. A thankful heart is an antidote. It's a vaccine for fear, to combat fear. R, remember what God has done for you. One of the things I've done for decades is that I send myself periodically an email that simply says, remember. And in that email, there's a long and growing list of things and people and events that all have to do with things that God has done for me. I remember. Remembering is a tremendous vaccine for fear. And it's huge in the Bible. For example, in the Exodus and then the celebration of the Exodus and all the Passovers that follow up to this day. The Hebrews, the Jews, remembered how God brought them out of Egypt. And then in the New Testament, at the Last Supper, as Jesus instigates or installs the Last Supper, he says, whenever you do this, remember me. So when I take the Lord's table, I remember two things. One, I remember what he did on the cross for me and for us. And second, I get more specific and individual. I remember, I deliberately think of things that God has done for me, how he rescued me out of my dark bondage. G, give thanks. R, remember. O, obey. Actively follow the commands and directions of Jesus. This itself is a faith builder, stepping out and following him as he directs your paths, following after him, becoming obedient to his ways. This is a great thing that builds trust. You learn this by experience, and the longer you do it, the more your faith strengthens. That's a tremendous vaccine against the virus of fear. And finally, W, worship. Live a God-honoring life, giving God the glory, telling him, and giving him praises and honor, and petitioning him for things and thanking him for his mercy and for his grace. Live a worshipful lifestyle, not just on a Sunday morning. Become a true worshiper and love him with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. In worship, that's a tremendous vaccine against the virus of fear. Cultivate an atmosphere of faith. Where there is faith, fear cannot exist. And do this by GROW. G.R.O.W. G, give thanks. R, remember. O, obey. And W, worship.